something happened today at work. I was on a call, and I was emoting with my face, and I didn't want to interrupt the person who was speaking.
It kind of sounds like you needed a wooden mask.
Yes, well, maybe, but right, I just kept emoting very much, without interrupting them. But in the chat,
I'm sure people were having a fucking field day watching you.
So apparently that's not the first time it has been grabbed as I've been doing just that.
Oh, you took a screenshot.
It's
Cool.
Screenshots, and now I have my own face as a reaction meme at work. It's on.
Congratulations.
I don't know. I don't know if I feel comfortable putting that out into the world. So I might.
Well,
have
it's
this
all
one.
over your work. So what's it to a bunch of strangers compared to people who actually know you? So
Fair enough, I guess. Hello, and welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide for the Cosmere Curious. I'm your co-host.
A growing sensation.
I was about to say with the face made for podcasting, Nick Gorman.
And memes, apparently. And I'm your co-host, AJ Gorman.
Today we're talking about Alloy of Law. We're doing a bit of a special topics episode. We're talking about religion and the broadsheets.
But before that, I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Ah, damn it.
I have a couple things that I want to talk about with the allomantic arts.
The metallic arts or allomancy in particular?
Metallic arts. Whatever. Some small thing in there where it's just like, oh yeah, this character is using gestures for pulling or pushing or whatever. And it's like, and Kelsier made a point in Mistborn to be like, don't use your fucking hand. Like, your hand is doing nothing.
Well, Kelsey was wrong on a bunch of things.
Okay.
So, like, I mean, I get...
Because all the pushing and pulling sensation is from, like, the center of mass.
Right.
So, like, your hand shouldn't really have anything to do with it.
And it's something that... and it's something that they do...
So, your arm waving about has nothing to do with your pushing and pulling, theoretically.
Theoretically. I'm not sure I believe it. We haven't... I'm willing... I'll go with it, right? Like, obviously, they can still push and pull. Where I think... I think you got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, though, is I guess what I'm trying to say, because I don't think that anybody's done empirical studies in world to prove it one way or the other.
Okay, fine.
So I could see that one being retconned, but not really a retcon.
Okay. They do call the special gun rounds Haze Killer rounds.
Yep.
After the Haze Killers, the people who were specially trained to fight Mistings and Mistborn.
And Renat even makes the callback to it.
She does, yes. And then I'm surprised that there's like not a new name.
A new name for what?
For like in Era 1 terms, like most people in the world are like Mistings.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not like a new name. I don't know, just so much time has passed.
Well, there's Fairings who only have one ferochemical ability. That was not a term in Era 1.
Well, yeah, because there weren't people like that.
Right, because there weren't Fairings.
And a Mistcloak is still called a Mistcloak.
Right, I mean, the mists are still there, though, right?
Yeah, I
know. The mists still come out.
Like, I know, but it's like the relationship with the mists is different.
I mean, it's only been 300 years, right? Like, we still call a doctor a doctor.
Speaking of mists, like, we know that when Sazed ascended and became Harmony, the god on this planet, that he did kind of change and modify some things, and we know that he did kind of change allomancy a bit, so snapping wasn't quite so traumatic. And then also that, we know that he changed the mists, but we don't really quite know how or to what extent.
I'm still confused about how even a shard could change allomancy, right? He could change, how he was able to change the whole magic system, because it just seems like he's changing the fabric of reality, or did he change something about all of the inhabitants on Scadrial?
Well, didn't ruin and preservation form allomancy? So the two powers that created it, shouldn't they have the power to modify it?
Maybe. Yeah, you're right. Well, and it's of preservation. It's how they access preservation's power, right? The Scadrians.
Right.
Okay. I don't know. Something about that still doesn't quite line up for me, but I think you've got a point there.
Yeah. Wax does still seem to think that there's, a pretty significant effect on his abilities when there is kind of mists about.
Right. Well,
But I don't think we saw him drawing it in like Vin did.
No.
There's just a lot less mist in this book.
Save for dramatic scene.
Going back to push and pull, it's just complete eye roll that Suits minions are called push and pull.
Right, they're code names. And why?
Very uninventive, kind of like Wax and Wayne.
Well, I was about to say, or like Mr. Suit.
Just very kind of like there's not. I'm like disappointed almost.
So, do we start with like what's in scope of this episode and what's not? Like the spoiler warning.
I was trying to leave the spoiler stuff till the end.
Well, that'd be good to. All right, so this episode is going to have spoilers for the Alloy of Law, and towards the end of the episode, we'll get into spoilers for the rest of Mistborn Era 2. So that's all of Shadows of Self, Bands of Mourning, and the Lost Metal.
You're gonna cut that part at the beginning, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
Might not. Depends on how much free time I get, honestly.
Okay. Just to connect the dots a little bit more, the Lost Metal that they refer to in this book, which is also the title of another book in the series, is the Atium. And Koloss are still around.
Yeah?
Xayza did not get rid of the Koloss, and in fact, that they have interbreeded with regular humans, so now you have Koloss-blooded humans, which are kind of super scary.
They're just,
just galled. That's all.
Galled?
It's galling.
Oh, okay.
And apparently, even if you're Koloss-blooded, you don't stop growing. But hopefully, it does sound like the skin does grow with you in this genetic pairing.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to say that.
I was about to say, I'm so confused. What does this have to do with the religion of the Broadsheets?
All right, fine. Let's talk about religion.
I just don't understand what we're talking about.
Okay, all right. Well, let's get into it. I just had some thoughts that I had to get out loud. Okay, let's get into religion. I want to start with survivorism. So survivorism is kind of the religion that Kelsier, very much on purpose, started as a way to kind of get the Ska to uprise.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I think we saw it forming in Era 1, especially in Well of Ascension. And it played a big role in Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages. But it takes on a different form now than it did then.
Yeah, because Demox, was one of the big Demu. Oh, the French lessons is going to pronounce it even differently now. Demu was, a big kind of figure in kind of having survivorism rise, and was a big kind of leader in that.
Yeah, I mean, he was an early adherent, Yeah.
And he was like leading people. He was like, wasn't he preaching a lot?
Yeah, my memory on that's a little hazy, but there's more I want to talk about with the Moon and survivorism in a different context, so I won't.
Okay.
I think we talked about that in like the Well of Ascension Cosmere Connections episode, actually. My thoughts on him and survivorism already there.
So we don't really get like a full explanation of any of these religions, but I do want to kind of point out a couple of the things that we learned. So
on survivorism, there's
yes.
It's the one that looks like it's most heavily influenced by real, like metatextually. It looks like it's the one that most closely resembles Christianity, right? You've got a key martyr figure. The symbol of the religion is also the symbol of that, person's death. It's, theologically very, very different, but a lot of the practices around it are, obviously,
familiar
reminiscent
looking.
Yeah.
So we did learn that survivorists scar themselves to show devotion, which I kind of thought was against the point. But anyways.
Yeah, I bet there might be some commentary there.
We also learned that about the survivor's mandate. And this is the explanation of like a rich man can kill a poor man purely because he feels like it. And that's like kind of the actions that we saw Kelsier kind of partake in Era 1.
Wait, what? Is that what? You mean the opposite?
So the argument that Miles can go around killing people, that's what's Wax saying, like, no, you can't invoke the survivor's mandate. You can't just kill somebody because you feel like it.
Okay.
Wax's argument is we've gotten better than that.
Yeah.
Don't know if you have, if people are going around doing this. And, if you have someone like Wax who's able to kind of take up the house and not really care about representing people and all that stuff. But
do you want to get into like why what Kelsier did was different from what Miles was doing?
If you wish.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like I have thoughts on that, right?
Okay, go for it.
Where it's very much what they're trying to do and what other options did they have, right? And we don't get too into it in this book. There's a few there's a few mentions of like, oh, they've got a governor and they've got a senate, right? But it's very much the people out in the roughs, they had other options other than outright rebellion, right? To make changes. I'm not going, and so there's that wrinkle of it too, where rebellion was really the only way that Kelsier could effect any change, right? Because the Lord Ruler was an autocrat with absolute control over everything, and he was immortal anyway, so like it was never gonna change. And then I think the other flip side of it is like who were they targeting, right? Where they, Miles, well, and that I think is a little bit blurrier, where Kelsier and Miles might have more similarities, because Kelsier would target nobles for the sake of being nobles, right?
Right.
It's us and them, right? And that's where Miles is like, yeah, I'm targeting the city folk, the ones with direct connections to Lord Mistborn, right? And that was, yeah. So I mean that's it. In my opinion, like there's overlap, but it's not. You're right. I'm with Wax, and obviously you as a reader are supposed to be in with Wax, right? On his side, take his opinion, but
or at least think about it.
Yeah, but I do think that what Miles was reacting to is also a valid thing to react to, right? Like there was systemic inequity going on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that I think Wax mentioned this in the book, that had Miles kind of been doing these same actions back in Era 1, he would have been lauded as a hero. Yeah. Conversely, if Kelsier was kind of doing the same things I was doing in Era 1 and Era 2, he would not have been a hero. So it's heroism is very kind of contextually based. And I do like that Brandon's kind of forcing us to kind of think about that.
I don't know if that was what Brando intended. And the reason I say that is because of the annotations in Era 1 made it very clear that we're not supposed to look at Kelsier as a hero.
Yes and no.
Or like his heroism has limits and is not perfect.
So I think Brandon's very aware of kind of like when people read the story for the first time and just kind of throw in their lot with Kelsier and kind of think of him as a hero. And then on rereads, really kind of picking up on all the nuances and details and like, this guy's kind of actually scary. But I think Brandon is kind of aware that, your first read, you are probably more likely to think of Kelsier as a hero. Yeah. A couple other tidbits. We learned that in the Church of the Survivor, there's 4 altars.
Yeah, I didn't quite follow that yet, but
I don't remember anything from any of the other books to kind of explain why there are 4 altars either.
I have speculation, but that doesn't fit with our spoiler tags.
Okay. They do say that the survivor gives his blessing to the independent, whether they be thieves, scholars, anarchists, or farmer who lives on his own land. Anyone who survives on his own or thought for himself was someone who followed the survivor.
Right. And so when you think about this, I'm going to stand by what I said at the top of the episode about survivorism being the most reminiscent of Christianity. And there are, I don't want to say factions, I don't even want to say sects, but there are
portions?
Yeah, there are groups of people specifically within Christianity who think it is a mandate to be self-sufficient and not to rely on anybody else, right? Mm-hmm. There are other traditions within Christianity that I personally much more closely align with, at least philosophically, where like when I was in school, one of my priests was a Franciscan monk, and one of the things about being a Franciscan is you take a vow of poverty, you give up your possessions, you exist only on
the charity
of others, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's like I said, I still see it being reminiscent of Christianity. Yeah. Where I see it being reminiscent of certain parts of Christianity, but also not. In some ways, it's opposite.
Let's move on to the path. I like the path a lot. I think I pretty well more aligned with the path. So we know a lot more about this religion because this is the religion that kind of Wax adopted. So this is, I think, what most.
Well, because it doesn't have much in the way of dogma, right? It's just
Oh, there's plenty of dogma. So here's the religion. So and this religion was actually somewhat purposefully set up as well by Sazed. So Sazed in Era 1, he was collecting all of these religions, throughout all of the history of Scadrial. So what he did when he ascended was he actually dumped all of that information that he collected, put it in a book, and
series of books.
A
The
series
Words of Founding.
The Words of Founding. Put those in a book. And the religion that's set up around this is you study all those religions in those books, and you learn from those moral codes. And kind of the one kind of, not statement, but directive that you're given is do more harm than good.
Nope, opposite.
Do more good than harm. Oops. Do more good than harm. I wrote that as do more harm than good. Okay. So do more good than harm.
Can I interject and
yeah,
there are again you can it's not subtle what real world religions are inspiring these, right? And so
why does it have to be a real world religion that inspires them? Why can't you just make up a religion?
It's not. If you audience, if these resonate with you, maybe you should check out Unitarianism. Universalism. There's two U's. It's Universalist Unitarianism, I think. I might have it that backwards.
Are you trying to convert people?
No, I do not follow that religion at all. I don't agree with it, but I can still find it beautiful.
Okay, anyways. So Pathians study all those religions, and then you also kind of meditate and or talk to God, usually with an earring, which we know from the end of the story and also from Mistborn Era 1 that what Sazed has asked people to do is to spike themselves so that he can talk and listen to them.
I think I disagree on that. It's inspired by Vin's hemalurgic spike. And there are circumstances where the earring is a hemalurgic spike, but you can't accidentally create a hemalurgic spike. You have to do it with intent. Otherwise, it doesn't become hemalurgic. So
then how is wax spike?
The spike itself was created with hemalurgy, I believe. Because when his earring, where did that come from?
So he actually didn't So I think most terrorists actually follow this religion, but he grew up terrorist, but he didn't actually follow the path. So he converted when he on his way out to the roughs.
Yeah.
So he met someone on a train, which Wax kind of jokes oh, it must have been an immortal figure, and we're like, well, duh, yeah, it was.
Faceless immortal, one of the Khandra. Right. So I believe the earring that he uses was given to him by that Khandra. And it is a hemalurgic spike.
Okay, but you don't think all Pathian earrings are hemalurgic?
No, I don't think all of them actually let you talk to God.
Okay.
Not in the same way that harmony is. It's hard, because harmony is technically omnipresent on Scadrial anyway, right? So but they don't get the same. You can't hear his voice in your head, and he can't hear your thoughts either. Not the same way that Wax's special spike earring does.
One of the clues and callbacks to Era 1 is that when Sazed / Harmony is talking to Wax for the first time, he ends his first kind of sentence with I think, which is classic Sazed.
Classic Sazed.
So anytime you're reading anything of the Cosmere and it ends with I think, most definitely that is Brandon tipping you off that this is Harmony / Sazed.
And the other thing I've clued in on is anytime there's a positive, I am unfortunately, it's blah 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 blah. All right, that's Sazed. That's a very Sazed.
Oh yeah, that's how he starts his book.
At the very least, it's a very Terrace way of speaking, because a lot of the Terrace folk have the same mannerisms in Era 1.
Yeah, and it's just so typical. For the first time you hear God's voice is just, of course I sent him. Of course I helped you. I've already answered your prayers. Come on. So, and I feel like that's just super typical of anecdotes about God talking to you as a non-religious person. Anyways, they say Harmony creating a way for as many as possible to make their own choices.
Right. So,
rather than just Harmony kind of trying to give everybody free will. This is kind of what he's saying he's trying to do, creating a way for as many as possible to make their own choices.
You might even say he really values autonomy.
But
You
that's not the shard.
That's a different shard, isn't it?
The actual definition of harmony is not really quality of forming a pleasing and consistent whole.
Yeah.
I don't know if harmony is really the best descriptor for this shard.
I mean, my thoughts on that don't fit this episode's spoiler tags.
Okay, make sure to mark it down. So we can talk about it later. We're getting close because the broadsheets we have to talk about. We're getting close to kind of the spoiler half of the episode.
Well, what about are we going to talk about sliverism?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I really don't have anything more to say about sliverism, and other than the fact that that's a religion set up revering Iron Eyes, and that I don't think that was a purposeful thing, or at least we don't know.
I mean, no, it's not. It's more like a vestige from whatever they were, the originators, the progenitors. I forget what they call them. The people who survived the Catacender. So the
people who survived Era 1. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So they had spent their whole lives worshipping the Lord Ruler, and the Steel Inquisitors were the most visceral agents, the one manifestations of his power that you're more likely to encounter. And, they're just an intimidating, badass looking thing, right? And so the only Steel Inquisitor left is Iron Eyes.
So everything kind of coalesced around him, and
so it's
sprang up a religion.
Yeah, so it's more like it. Over 300 years, they sort of blurred the lines between, old Iron,
the Steel Ministry,
the Steel
versus,
Ministry. Yeah. So it's sliverism is, and I mean even the name, it's a holdover from the Steel Ministry calling the Lord Ruler as a sliver of the infinite.
Which, of course, refers to him having held a small piece of God's power.
And then the fourth major religion is Trellism.
And we only get a very passing reference of this religion. We kind of hear of Miles kind of talk in his head about he follows Trell, and that all other religions are kind of like a corruption of Trellism. And it's a very tantalizing tidbit in this book, and we don't learn more until much later.
Right, and his last words are about Trellism.
Yes.
Yeah, the men of, the men of red and gold are coming?
Yes, which is very reminiscent of Death Rattles, of the Death Rattles in Stormlight. I mean, he's about to die, and he's saying something prophetic. It feels a little bit Death Rattle-like. I don't think it is a Death Rattle.
I was about to say the Death Rattles, we can talk about it in a Stormlight episode, but the tone didn't match.
Okay. We'll have to agree to disagree on that.
The Death Rattles all have a very distinctive voice, and this was a different one.
I didn't say it was a Death Rattle. I said it was just, it made me think of the Death Rattles. Okay. Everything after here, we're going to talk, or is going to be full spoilers?
Spoilers. Through the Lost Metal. It's not going to include anything for Stormlight, right?
Correct.
Or is it?
Yeah, it's just spoilers for the rest of Era 2.
Wax and Wayne series, Through the Lost Metal.
Yes. Okay, so what's up with these broadsheets? They are super important. Do not skip. Read through the articles. In the Tales of the Rough section, there is talk about Koloss having kind of superior weapons of an incredibly fine make. So we don't know what to do with this information yet, but I think it's definitely kind of something that you want to take note of.
Yeah,
I mean, it could also just be, to further illustrate the point that, Koloss are former humans.
Yeah, I mean,
that has not changed in this era. Koloss are creatures that are formed from humans.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of tidbit in those broadsheets that people can choose to become Koloss. Okay. There's also articles in there about this trade union leader, Flores Dernstead. Okay, these articles about him are foreshadowing for these future books. So if you've already, since we're doing spoilers,
I did not pick up on anything from that.
I forget which book it is, but there's a book where Wax and Wayne kind of go and free his daughter, who's been held captured, because they're using her as blackmail. You don't remember any of this?
I'm trying to think, because I remember who were they blackmailing?
They're blackmailing this politician, Flores Dernstead.
That sounds kind of like Shadows of Self. I don't remember.
So this is all foreshadowing for that.
Gotcha.
Because in that article, they're talking about how, Flores was this very popular union person. He got elected, and then all of a sudden he kind of turned on a dime and went against all of the people that he was representing. And that is foreshadowing for he's being blackmailed.
I did not pick up on that. Good eye.
There's also articles about life across the ocean, and that there's more metals out there. That is foreshadowing for later books to like say, hey, there's actually other people. There's a whole other civilization on the other side of this planet.
There's another continent.
And there are more metals, and they know more things than this civilization does. There's also articles talking about Iron Eyes sightings, which is foreshadowing for the fact that Marsh did show up at the end of this book. He is very much still alive.
And while you're dying, I'll be still alive. Still alive. Still alive. Give me a look.
What is that from?
The video game Portal.
Right. There's also Khandra sightings. There are lots of articles talking about Khandra and people.
The faceless immortals.
Yeah, or someone, my husband's dead, but then I swear like he was the one who like pulled people out of a fire 2 weeks later. That kind of, I forget exactly what it was, but there's talk about Khandra in there. Khandra very much still a thing and active in this world. And then there's a lot of articles about a politician named Feltree. He was a rioter. I forget. And that's important somehow, but I forget. I need to read the other books to remember why that's important, but it is important. Every single article, there is something to pull from.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading that and like, oh yeah, no, get your aluminum hats,
Yeah, so I think the commercials in there are more just. I don't think there's anything to draw from the ads in there other than just to kind of help set up the world.
Well, and they help set up the setting, but also I think even just the fact that there were no advertisements in Era 1. There's no advertisements in Stormlight, not like that. Not, there's not even,
They're just trying to modernize it, yeah.
Right, but it's like it really does set and it's the 1920s style thing where it's like, hey, come get your fantastic self-driving carriage. And then there's no need to shovel manure.
Yeah, and the article is about like arguing events.
Right. Yeah, and this one
use
paid for by the
Don't
stagecoach union.
Use carriages. Yeah. All that stuff. Okay, I appreciate those broadsheets way more on rereads than I did in the first. Also,
yes.
the larger format paperback.
Yeah, I was about to say I was reading on the
super awesome to read those broadsheets.
I didn't even realize that there were real pictures in there. I feel cheated having it on my ebook where I can't zoom in.
As much as I love ebooks, they're not perfect.
I know.
Which is why we have 15 million different copies of every book.
Well, you're missing the other thing, which is that we have toddlers who love books so much they destroy them.
In a variety of ways.
Yes. But it's only the books that they really like that get destroyed. I'm just saying.
I know, because then they're like, oh, I just want to wash the book. And I'm like, no.
Please
don't wash the book. Just throw the book away if you're going to wash it.
I still remember that one dinosaur book that got flushed in the potty. Anyway.
Library book.
Oh, shit. Did that one more than one? It might. Oh. Because I know it happened with the dinosaur book, but you're right. It also happened with Whales on the Bus. That's irrelevant.
I had some philosophy questions for you, but I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip those.
Let's say what? We put all the philosophy stuff in the Stormlight anyway.
I do have some random thoughts / a new segment that I would like to call What the Fuck.
What the fuck?
High Imperial.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
That's funny.
I think we talked about it last episode, so we won't get into it, but just...
Wasing the was and, knowing of the... Anyway.
Okay.
Very good. I thought it was funny.
In the prologue, there's just a description of Wax holding his gun up by his head, and I'm just like, what?
The fuck?
Yes. When you're, I don't like guns. I don't want to know how to shoot guns, but I don't know. It just seems weird. I feel like in a lot of other media out there, I see people holding the guns down, point down, and then this is very specifically Wax is holding his gun up by his head.
The pose you are striking there has been on so many video game and James Bond movie poster arts. It's just like that's an iconic
sense.
I don't
We're reading this. We're not looking at it on the cover. Anyways, what the fuck?
I'm surprised you haven't complained on Mistcloaks yet.
And that's always what the fuck. There's a description about Miles stood. So this is during the train car fight scene, and the train is moving, and Miles stood tall, plainly indifferent to the shaky footing. Like, I realize that he's kind of immortal and doesn't have to worry about falling off the train, but I mean, he still wants to stay on the train. And then I would think with Wax, and he's able to kind of pull on more weight, that Wax would be the steadier one on a train, because his weight would enable him to kind of balance the wind blowing on his body. So there were some physics things that I was just kind of like, what the fuck?
I thought it was meant to be more illustrative of Miles is so used to just taking it on the chin that he doesn't react to stimuli the same way anymore.
Didn't make sense
And
to me.
and I thought him
my
being
engineering
indifferent to
brain.
it. I thought him being indifferent to it was more like he wasn't unnerved,
It's just-
not that he wasn't, anyway.
Physics. Didn't make sense to me. What happened to his aunt?
I don't know. I did notice that this time. Wait, was she the one who died? No, that was the
So,
cousin, whatever.
Wax's cousin died of a disease.
Yeah.
That's what Mr. Suits whatever his uncle admits. He's like, well, that wasn't really planned. So then I had to modify my plans, and you had to become House Lord when I didn't really want you to. And he talks about the fact that, well, obviously he's still alive, and he talks about Wax's sister still being alive, but they also said that his aunt was in that carriage ride, that she was also died, and like there's no one asked about her.
Who?
What the fuck?
Who?
You're gonna ask about everybody else, but what about your aunt?
I mean, I guess maybe she wasn't his favorite aunt. I don't know what to tell you.
What the fuck? I think those were all my good ones. Well, actually, here's the last one. Stairs gets taken.
If we were just going to try to tie this into the religion and broadsheets theme of this, we could just say, hey, what the hell? Anyway, just notes for next time. What the hell? Using its religion.
Anyways, at best.
How does this?
So Stairs gets taken. Wax kind of fights people. Whatever,
Kind of fights people. He does fight.
He does fight people, and then he finally gets outside, and he just kind of sits down on a curb because they're like, well, they took off, and I'm like, well, you could chase after them if you wanted, but I realize you're an old man feeling it, and you probably aren't up for another fight, so fine. But then the next thing that we see him, he's just like admitting to Marasi that, oh, I'm just kind of twiddling around trying to figure out this. The composition of these metal fragments. Like, I could send it out and have the answer sooner or whatever, but I'll just do it myself. Like, what the fuck, man? You're just gonna sit on your ass?
The whole point is that he wasn't sitting on his ass.
He wasn't sitting on his ass, but he was definitely, like, procrastinating.
He was fretting. He was stressing.
He was definitely procrastinating.
Those two are not mutually exclusive, and in fact, one of those causes the other, and then causes the original one again. It's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. You're talking to an expert.
Okay. Just what the fuck?
Well, maybe not an expert. A problem? An offender? Anyway, whatever. Yes. I mean,
an experienced person.
Yeah. I'm in this picture and I don't like it.
Okay, that's all the good ones that I have.
Well, this has been Religion and the Broadsheets and
more.
And we've been Cosmere Casual. Thanks so much, audience, for listening to us. Thanks, dear, for podcasting with me.
Thanks for podcasting with me.
I guess I should go get our kids. If you want to reach out to us, our email address is cosmerecasual@gmail.com. Our social media handle is also Cosmere Casual. Our intro and outro music is licensed through Tribe of Noise. The artist is Ketsa, and the song is Odyssey.
And until next time, keep your wits about you.